CG Show, episode 7. With me today, Mr. Chris Smith, the founder of BIG Esports, which you help esports influencer campaigns. You consult, you run events, and you run workshops. Literally everything that's got to do with esports or gaming, you're the man. Thank you so much for joining me today, Chris.
No worries, man. Happy to be here.
I gave you a call a couple months ago because I stumbled across exactly what you do, and esports and gaming obviously has trickled my interest. We had a good conversation, and then we obviously caught up as well just to discuss a bit of investing and how exactly it all works. So I've been trying to wrap my head around the game still, and I'm still learning and really delving into it. And it's a big reason why I wanted to get you on today, because I think you got a lot of value that you can provide to a lot of people. This is a space that is growing at an alarming rate, especially due to COVID. I'm sure it's just been going nuts. Let's start off with just a bit of a general understanding of explain esports and gaming to what is this online craze that's been going on at the moment?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, you've obviously remembered one thing that we talked about at the start, right? Which is what's the difference between gaming and what's the difference between esports? Like esports is a massive buzzword right now. It's like blockchain, or dare I say, like blockchain esports is like the buzzword of the buzzword if you put those two together. So esports is a massively growing industry in Australia and around the world in many different countries. It's 20 to 30% compound annual growth rate. And those are numbers from people like PwC and the ones who make the big bucks to be able to make those definitions properly. I think at one stage it was a 23.4% compound annual growth rate in Australia in 2017, which is big. But as far as esports goes as a whole, it's a $1.1 billion USD market. So it's growing, but it's not massive yet. But the massive thing is the gaming market and games market as a whole. Which is in Australia a $3.3 billion AUD market, globally $153 billion. So games is bigger than music and movies industry combined together.
Didn't you? I think you you already told me, but I think you actually posted a carousel of that the other day, really showing the stats, and it's crazy. Obviously, what's been going on, and just explain a little bit about what you do. So how did you get into this, and what are you like? What are you doing?
Sure. So I guess, I've been in it for over a decade now already. I'm 28, coming on 29. So this has been, kind of my job since jobs were a thing for me. I did an IT traineeship straight out of school as a gap year, planned to go into university to do psychology or something like that. I got accepted into a Bachelor of Behavioral Science and, ended up landing a job in this industry. So for me, I started out like many people did, which is as a player. I was a young kid playing a lot of video games and thinking, how can I prove that I'm better than other people? And how can I become a better player? There must be some sort of competitions. I played in soccer in school. I played cricket in school. I played a little bit of volleyball and thinking, I can prove my worth against other people. I can train, I can get better. Why can't I do this in video games too? I can compete. So I went on that pathway, and that enabled me to become one of the best in one of the best teams in Australia for multiple different first-person shooter titles. I played in top 4, top 8, sometimes number 1 ranked team, depending on what it was in a few different games. It allowed me to travel around Australia a bit and play some games, but nothing too big. When I was playing, it wasn't possible to get a 100,000 USD salary. It wasn't possible to play for a $35 million prize pool like it is today, like Australians are doing today, and people around the world, like 16-year-olds are doing and winning today, $4 million pre-tax, so not quite in their pocket. So for me, I've done a bit of everything in this space since I was around 16, 17. I was a commentator for a period of time, got a couple of international opportunities that didn't mature due to visa requirements. I did PR and marketing for 6 years. I helped launch 2 different companies into Australia, worked for one for 4 years, one for 2, one from Taiwan, one from the US. I managed one of Australia's first professional players, did PR and marketing, like I said, for those 2 brands. I was a journalist for a year and a half. Helped to found an esports association. So for me, like on my personal, professional development, every time I thought I found the right thing. I thought I was like, yep, I want to be the best player in the world. This is what I want to set myself to. Then when I kind of quote unquote retired from semi-professional play, I was like, I want to be the biggest and best commentator in the world. That's what I want to do. And then I want to be the biggest and best marketing head in the world. And I realized after a while that after I did, 20 of these different jobs, that actually, I want to work on the industry, not in the industry. I want to be able to help the whole space grow. I want to be the connector. And I talked about this a little bit in my content that I'm sure we'll talk about later. I specifically remember a period of time sitting there at like midnight on a school day, in grade 11 when I was 17 years old, sitting there being disappointed in myself, thinking it really sucks. I spend so much time to get to know people. I really invest in people. I love to connect. I love to talk. I love to learn about people's lives and discuss ideas with them, talk about different things, and think I'm never going to be able to make a job out of that. It's ridiculous. I got to stop talking to people. I've got to go do something. And now, that's my job. Just last week, it was announced that a 2-year deal was signed between Ghost Lifestyle, who make a new gaming product, an energy product. You can kind of see it through my head here. We signed a 2-year deal with them, and Exit, which is an upcoming, very diverse-based esports team, global esports team, multiple 6-figure deal, multiple year contracts. That was us, and that was through relationships. That was I'm good friends now with Ghost, and I was good friends for a long time with the Exit founding team. So you can make money out of relationships, but you just need to find the right way and the right place to make them work. So that's where we function a lot these days. Create a lot of content. We do a lot of consultancy. We're doing some hands-on consultancy with some global clients, which is not just, hey, we will help you to decide what to do in esports and gaming. We will work with you on a plan to your strengths, and we'll actually run it for you or with you when it rolls out. So we're very hands-on. There is a space for the PwCs and the KPMGs to be like, hey, can you do us a financial model? Can you help us to consult and pass me the details? But esports and gaming, you need to put your money where your mouth is, or for me, your knowledge and information where your mouth is. So the Saudi Arabian client that we're working with, who's a movie cinema company, even if I told them everything, they couldn't do it. You couldn't just give someone a manual on how to be a doctor and go, there you go cut that person open. But, they need to be handheld through that process. And that's what really excites me. It's not just, telling people, not just say Gary V, who'll often be like, here are the 3 steps to do X, Y, Z. I would rather say, look, here are the 3 steps, and I'm going to hold your hand and we're going to do it together. And I'm going to get a bit of equity in your company, and we're going to build it together. And then when you can run and, I help you walk, when you can run, then I'll go on to the next thing.
Talking about actually Gary Vee, and I'm glad you actually said that. I wanted to ask you, he actually launched Vayner Gaming or something like that. What is that?
Yeah, so it's a influencer agency and player agency. So player agencies really didn't exist because in the past 5 to 10 years, because simply esports professionals, the people who play as a competition, like an AFL player or a tennis player, not the celebrities, not the influencers, they just weren't earning enough money. There's no point in taking 5, 10, 15, 20% of their salary month to month, because their salary might be $2,000 a month. So you can't make a business off $100 here, $100 there, and they're barely making enough to survive as it is. But now, you're seeing things like the Call of Duty League, which is a franchise league. Gary Vee also is an investor in a team in there called the Minnesota Rocker. They installed minimums that every single franchise player needs to be paid at least 80,000 USD a year, even if they're sitting on the bench. So now you're starting to see those minimums. Now you're starting to see the League of Legends Championships in America has around a $300,000 USD contract on a 1 to 3 year. That's the minimum. That's the minimum average. Average minimum is around a $300,000 contract. So now you're seeing enough money start to come in. So you're seeing a few, like Ford Models has gotten into the area. They've been around since the 1920s, I think, and they work with just about every good-looking person in New York, and now a lot of esports players as well. You're seeing other ones like Prodigy Agency coming out of France in hardcore esports. Jeremy, who's a good friend of mine, runs that. They're representing, I think, something like 30 or 40 plus gaming talent around the world now, from Belgium to the US to Korea and others as well. So you're starting to see like this management come in. And obviously it's important. When I was playing at top levels in Battlefield 2, I was 17 years old. There's no way I knew how to read a contract. I was from a small town called Devonport in Tasmania. My mum's social worker, dad works in IT. They don't have any idea about contracts and things like that. So it's important to get that representation, especially now when you can literally be 17 years old. Like some of these guys are in this League of Legends teams. They're 16, 17. They're being paid 100 to 300 grand a year USD plus free houses and everything to live in.
Wow. How in Australia, how do we compare to the rest of the world in regards to gaming? Influences wise, our quality, everything, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So esports is fairly infant here compared to the rest of the world. You know, there was a massive surge with a lot of investment. You know, 2017, 2018, everyone wanted to buy an esports team. And, you know, a similar contact that we have with Leo as well as with Playside and such, you know, that's where I started working with Playside. They came to me and said, Chris, I want to buy an esports team. And I said, look, for you guys, I think it's a terrible idea. And that was my opinion for them as a consultant, not as a financial advisor. And I guess I have to preface that. I'm not a financial advisor, so please don't take my financial advice. But you know, the space here in Australia, we're limited by you know, our country size. But the advantage is that we speak the same language. So our influencers massively overperform. We've got the 8th most watched YouTube creator of any YouTube creator at all. So single person who makes YouTube videos, the 8th most watched in the world lives in Sydney. He gets around 270 million video views a month just on YouTube, not including his TikTok, his Instagram, his Twitter, anything else like that. He's often streaming to 20 to 50,000 concurrent viewers on YouTube. So that means 20 to 50,000 people are watching him at any one time. Usually when he releases a video, within 24 hours of that video being released, it's got about 5.5 million views. I mean, so that means that him by himself, you know, he creates content out of a small office. He has, you know, a non-full-time manager, and he's got a couple of editors that work with him. He's bigger than Love Island by himself.
That's
by those numbers.
There's also a guy, I actually stumbled across his Instagram page just the other day. Dr. Disrespect, I think it is.
Yep.
What is that? I read a little bit about his story, and Michael, who you met with me, I gave him a call and just said, Michael, who is this guy? And Mikey gave me the rundown, and I was amazed. Maybe you could probably give us a 10 times better in-depth discussion about who Dr. Disrespect is and what he's about and what he's doing content-wise at the moment.
So he does one thing really well, which is he plays a character. So, you know, his history and, you know, his real life name is Guy Beam. And he actually used to design games. He designed levels within games in Call of Duty. So he worked for Activision. So he now is an influencer who plays the game that he was helping to create previously. But what he does really well is he plays this macho 80s character, you know, this kick-ass, like if you were to see like a cop show in the 80s where the guy's got like a mullet, he's got a big moustache, he's kicking down doors, he's kissing all the women, he's driving a Ferrari, you know, he's smoking out the window, he's not wearing a seatbelt. Like this is the type of guy that he plays, you know, and he's got the whole shtick where he calls himself like, you know, he's like the 2-time world champ and various things like that too. So, you know, he does that extremely well. But I mean, you know, he is, you know, top 5, definitely, maybe top 3 in regards to like reach and viewership of anyone. And, you know, the earnings potential for guys like this, like, you know, if he's not earning $15 to $20 million a year, like he needs a new manager. At minimum, you know, there are other guys who are similar size to him, like a guy called Nick Merckx, who's known for playing a lot of Fortnite and now into Call of Duty Warzone. You know, he's paying subscribers purely on Twitch. There's one monetary value where people can pay to support you on Twitch TV, which is a streaming platform. The lowest amount of support is $4.99 USD per month. Twitch keeps 50% of that generally, but for someone big, they'll keep around 30%. And he's got, you know, around 80 to 120 grand a month coming in that he's keeping, not, you know, after the split, just purely from that one vehicle, not including any other ad revenue, not including brand deals, direct monetary donations, anything like that. So all these kind of guys will have these kind of similar amounts of subscribers where they're pulling in, you know, $12 million a year purely from this one source, not including anything else.
That's insane. Talking about Twitch, I've been playing around with it a little bit. I know obviously it was built purely for gaming, and now, but I've been playing around with it. There's a lot of people that are using it for content. Like there's streams that go on for 4 or 5 days of just people sitting around a table, just talking and just going along. What do you know much about the Twitch platform and where's it heading? Where's it evolving to, and what's happening? And are there other platforms that are very big for gaming, or is like how's YouTube responding to all this? Does YouTube care about the gaming industry? Like what's going on?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like it's a funny set of happenings, right? So Twitch TV started as a thing called Justin TV, and that was because of one of the founders, Justin, and two other guys. Basically, they were like, "Can we make a reality show where we broadcast what Justin sees 24/7?" So he wore like a computer and a hat with a camera on it, and he was like a PC coder, and they were broadcasting that nonstop. You know, there's a fantastic podcast if anyone wants to listen to podcasts about startups and funding in general, I would suggest the Gimlet Media podcast called Startup. It's very meta. It starts off with them making a podcast about them starting their podcast company. And I think it ends like they sold to Spotify for a lot of money. So I'd say it ends around there. But they've got stories of other people throughout that time as well. And it was a great story about these guys, how they started. And then they had Justin TV, and then they found out that a lot of people were actually using it to start to stream StarCraft and games. So they created an offshoot after a while called Twitch.tv. So they had both. Justin TV was like, Joe Rogan could do his podcast on there, but he ended up doing it on whatever that other streaming platform was that people used to use. And do general stuff. Twitch TV was purely for gaming. So there was a period of time when Twitch was banning people for doing things that weren't gaming. There was a popular female StarCraft 2 host, and she got a temporary ban because she was streaming and talking to people while cleaning a room and building a gaming chair, like the one that I'm sitting on. But now we've gone full circle where just chatting, as the category is called, is the fastest growing category and one of the largest categories of all of them, which is generally people just chatting. So a lot of the time they might be doing what you call like an IRL stream, where there's a US guy that's been in Australia for a while. He goes and does survival challenges on Fraser Island, and he'll broadcast that. He went to rural places in the Philippines, and he's broadcasting what he can see. There's a camera on his shoulder, and you can see basically eye line as to what he's doing. He's 4x4ing out in the middle of nowhere in Queensland. He's fly fishing. He's skydiving. Like, he's doing all of this stuff, and you can watch it live. Maybe not skydiving because you're probably out of reception if you're up there, but pretty much everything else he does. Live kayaking, like all that kind of stuff. And that's a massively fast-growing thing. So now they've actually, in the past, I think about 8 years ago now, they shut down Justin TV, and they allowed this stuff to come across to Twitch TV now as well. I mean, there's French Parliament has broadcast political proceedings on Twitch TV before. Donald Trump got banned off Twitch TV for a while due to some stuff that he said, but they were broadcasting his rallies, I believe, on Twitch. It was some comments about Mexico or something. They banned him because of some TOS, some comments that he made. There's so much on Twitch now. There's even like one of the biggest shows ever is called Raj Royale, which is like a fake kind of dating battle royale show, which is a super meta, but it gets like 10 to 30,000 concurrent viewers. It's got massive clips that come there all the time, massive live stream fails and people saying awkward and weird stuff. And really playing up that rhetoric of gamer girl and gamer boy and these kind of things too. So Twitch is huge. And I mean, was it 3-4 years ago now? It sold to Amazon for just under $1 billion, which in the startup, in the founders' minds, as per like the podcast I was mentioning, that's much more than they expected to get for it. And I think most people too. But the potential is massive. Like I was saying here, you've got the top of the crop creators are making $12 million a year just off basically donations, not including anything else. I think Twitch was trying to make around 600 million in revenue last year. They fell just a little bit short of that, but Amazon's diving in deep. If you've got an Amazon Prime subscription, you get automatic benefits now on Twitch TV. There's auto plugins for e-commerce now too, where streamers can say, hey, do you want to buy this microphone that I'm using on stream and be like me? Look down below, there's a link directly to Amazon, and they get fed back, a percent or 2%, commission, and sell it through to Amazon. So there's so many different things that you can do.
It's is there anything else that's competing against Twitch, or is Twitch just the one at the moment?
It really is the one. I mean, Facebook's trying. Here in Australia, they've just hired a new partnership manager. So there's a management company called Click Management. They've just hired a new guy, Nate Bramley, to be like a Facebook CSP. From my understanding, he's not going to be onboarding new streamers to Facebook. They signed some big deals with some global influencers. Facebook gaming is huge in Southeast Asia because in the Philippines and many other countries, where it's low socioeconomic, Facebook is free data. So Facebook is the place over there, whereas most gaming operates on Twitter, and it's starting to come to Instagram. But YouTube as well is making massive waves as well. YouTube has that 8th largest creator. They've got Laserbeam. That's his name, or Lannon is his real life name if you want to look him up. He's been streaming on there a lot, and they've also started performing well in esports. They bought the rights to some Blizzard and Activision games, which are the two largest franchise leagues in the world, pure franchise leagues, launched as a franchise league, which is Overwatch League and Call of Duty League. And from the numbers I've seen, they're starting to outperform Twitch on the same channels when they were broadcast across them both. So they're starting to gain some traction in there too, and that kind of stuff. But people might have seen, if you're in the market, other platforms like Mixer died because, Mixer was created by Microsoft, who have unlimited amounts of money. But unfortunately, Mixer's marketing and position seem to be we're Twitch, but not, which doesn't quite fly. You need to have something a little bit different. If you were to make the next Tesla, you can't make a car that looks 93% like it, because there's no point. They're just going to go buy a Tesla. But there are some other platforms that are coming through and starting to make some grounds. But, someone was asking me the other day, someone who has access to a lot of capital, they're like, hey, Chris, should we make a new streaming platform? And I was like, man, unless you got $500 million, don't do it. Because I think realistically, it's how much it's going to cost to try to overthrow someone like Amazon and Twitch.
Okay. And just in regards to a lot of these guys, these personal brands that are making these influencers that are making the most money out of what they're doing. Is it kind of like, where are they the best at gaming or at esports, or is it just they've just built such a big brand that they're making money from it? Like, where's the balance of like the rankings, really? I'd say
there's got to be a mix. They've got to be, generally, like if I was to write like a formula, they've got to be like top 10 percentile. So they've actually got to be better than most people watching them. They don't have to be the best, but they have to be better than many, and they have to be entertaining. So like one example is a guy called Shroud, who was paid around $10 million to sign on to Mixer. And then he was paid out when Mixer got shut down, and he went across to Twitch, which is crazy. And Mixer kind of got integrated a little bit with Facebook. They bought across where their partners could seamlessly transition across to Facebook. So there was a bit of an out there, but he took the payout and said, no, thank you, Facebook. And now he's on Twitch. But for him, he was a pro gamer. He started creating content, and he was making so much more money and having a lot less stress from content creation that he said, screw this, I'm quitting. I'm just going to be a CSGO streamer. And then, and then he played a lot of the battle royales like Apex Legends and PUBG and things like that too. And he is amazing. He's an aim god. He's so good at his game. He's easy top 1 percentile. And that's a lot of his marketing. He's not as engaging. He's not as upbeat and exciting as someone like Ninja. He's quite reserved. He doesn't necessarily jump up and down. He doesn't necessarily have a really loud voice. He's much quieter. But he's just so damn skilled at the game, and he's good at keeping in touch with his fans that he's good. Whereas Dr. Disrespect, also a great player, not as good as Shroud, but he's a fantastic personality. It's a whole gimmick going on all the time, and you can submerge yourself in his world of him being the two-time, him being the 80s LA cop that you see on 3 a.m. TV. Or someone like Ninja, who's you could say is more family friendly, who has great branding behind him. He's always got the Red Bull headband on. He's always loud and proud and in charge, and he's more like, I wouldn't want to say, maybe a little bit more Disney host than the others. So he's a bit more on camera. He's a bit more toothy smile. He's a bit more like that, which is who he is. And I guess that's the same for all of them too. The three of them just play a character, which is themselves a lot of the time. But definitely you can't just be, there's a common misconception that you can just be a good looking girl, jump on and play video games, and boom, you've got like, 400,000 followers. Because if you suck at the game, like, who wants to watch that? If you really suck at soccer and you're just like a good looking person and you're like, yeah, I'm going to kick a ball and get 10 million subscribers, it's not going to happen, because everyone's going to be like, well, cool, you look hot, but it only lasts for a few minutes, and then I don't want to watch you ever again. These streamers are streaming like 5 days a week, 8 hours a day a lot of the time. So you have to be engaging. If you've got holes in your game, like, they can see through those holes. It's not just you're just on, it's not just, you can't just fake it. You're not just doing 2-minute videos out there. You're not just doing performances like, Milli Vanilli, who get caught out for having their backup singers being the ones that are really singing and dancing. You're always on in this situation. You're always on Twitter. You're always on Instagram. You're always doing stories. You're always on Twitch. Then you're doing YouTube videos, and then you're doing live appearances. Like, you need to be true to who you are.
Yeah, it's I can't remember now. I ran into their page. There's probably millions of them. They're a massive crew in America. They're gamers.
FaZe Clan.
FaZe Clan. What are their story? I was shocked. I was watching their videos of their mansion. They're all these like nerdy guys, and they got like 10 girls. And in their videos, they're all writing that these girls are gold diggers.
there's a really funny story about that. It's about a Call of Duty player who I don't think is in phase. I don't think ever has been, but he's a Call of Duty professional player. He's quite good looking, goes to the gym quite a lot. And there's that cliche of a lot of the Latin American news weather girls. You see them on YouTube. Like people love to make those creepy YouTube compilations of like good looking, weather girls. But one of them. Yeah, one of them who, if you saw her, you'd probably recognize her because she's one of the most famous and she's a massive celebrity in Latin America, reached out to him because from what I understand is that, he had like 1 million plus followers on Instagram. He's really good looking. She's like, he must be a sports star. He slid into her DMs and they started dating. But, obviously after a bit, she found out he's an esports star and he plays video games. But it's pretty funny to see that crossover. So like leading into FaZe Clan, for example. So FaZe Clan literally started off as a bunch of like 16-year-old kids making pretty cringy Call of Duty videos for other 16-year-old kids. If you were 20 watching that, you'd be like, oh, like this dumb music, it's stupid dubstep. They're doing like 360-degree no scopes. Like this is just stupid. But it's very entertaining, especially for their audience. And they grew from there into a massive company. The company's worth over $240 million now. Compared to them and their competitors, they should be on track to making 30, 40, $50 million a year in revenue, as their competitors and within where they're sitting within the market. They're doing things like, I had their chief revenue officer come on board. They sold $1 million worth of Champion merchandise in the first hour. They did a drop on a Sunday. They did a collab, and anyone who works in branding knows how much this means. Champion changed their logo for FaZe for this collab. They did a half F, a half C for this drop. They did a special drop with Manchester United. Similar kind of thing. They put their logos together. The Man U guys wore a spray jacket that said FaZe Clan on it, walking out into one of their matches pre-coronavirus. They've got people in there, like FaZe Banks and Adapt and Rain, they've all personally got 5 to 10 million YouTube subscribers, plus their gaming team that has them all. They previously had 2 10-bedroom mansions side by side in LA. Now they've got one $30 million house where, like you were saying with that thing you were watching, where everybody's basically got their own section. Everybody doesn't necessarily have their own room. They've got their own room, lounge room, kitchen, bathroom, toilet, like everything, like shower, like all that stuff within all their own sections too. So the thing that FaZe does really well is they skirt the line between gaming and esports. I'm friends with some of their senior management and ex-management too. And, they're an esports team. They've got one of the best Counter-Strike teams in the world, but really they're about content. Really they're about FaZe Rain. He had a Lambo that he let random people draw on. He got like some chalk pens and he was driving his Venator around and just being like, hey, you come and draw on my car if you want. And, things like that. They've got Nick Merckx, who I talked about before, who's making up to 12 million a year just from YouTube people, from Twitch subscriptions. It's massive, and the buying power of their fans. Here's another thing for you, and this goes back to like that. You said that LinkedIn thing that I released the other day. So, we've been working a bit with KPMG and some other very traditional business clients. And the easiest thing for me is to rely on the numbers. And one of the very easy things is, okay, here's FaZe Clan. They've got 80 million followers across their social platforms, which is more than most like FIFA clubs do. And if you were to compare that 1-to-1, they've got 10% of the valuation. If they're 240 mil, that's like 10% of the $2.4 billion valuation some of these may have. Plus, they did a meetup in New York City at the Fortnite World Cup last year. The line was 16 city blocks long for people to see them in New York City. 16 blocks. Cops shut it down because it got too rowdy. There were too many people turned up. Then they did a meetup a couple of days later with just one of their talent in California. It was around 110 degrees Fahrenheit, so somewhere like 38 to 41 degrees Celsius. 2,000 kids turned up, and they started trying to break down the temporary fences, so the police shut that down as well. That's how many people are rocking up. If you can get 2,000 kids to rock up to see one person in like 35 to 40 degree heat, previously in New York City, like 16 city blocks of people come to see you at a little store. They were doing a meetup at like a little sports store. Like, it's crazy. The fandom's crazy.
Level. And it's a question that I want to ask you just a bit down the track. But before we do, I just want to go into what's been going on. We probably met. Oh, and it was during COVID. It was early into COVID. I think it just started.
Yeah.
And what's happened to gaming since everyone's been home? Have the numbers just been spiking? What's going on with esports just in general over the last just couple months? in comparison to what's already happened.
So a couple of things. So once again, like separating gaming and esports, right? So esports, a lot of attention, especially in simulated racing. So the Formula One has been running a lot of stuff in esports. There's a company called Veloci Esports that did not the Bahrain when the Bahrain was supposed to be on. They did not the Oz GP because the Australian GP was the first ever big sports event to be cancelled around the world. And
right.
a few days later, they actually ran an online, not the Oz GP. In Australia, supercars, they ran something like 3 or 4 rounds with 100% of their real life drivers playing in the online simulator environment. IndyCar in the US, NASCAR in the US ran things with almost their whole field of real drivers. The MotoGP even did something as well globally. TCR in Australia as well did something, another sim. And then as far as other traditional sports goes, the NBA, there was a bunch of FIFA stuff. A Barclays sponsored FIFA event for charity was run, and a whole lot as well. So a lot of attention from the outside, but not necessarily a large peak in any of the numbers. And the problems with esports and coronavirus comes with a lot of it's still live. You need live production facilities. A lot of people are playing from live studios each week. There's home and away games for things like Overwatch and for Call of Duty League. They move to online. Overwatch has teams in Shanghai, has teams in London. It has teams in LA. So how do they play against each other on the internet? It's impossible unless you can make the speed of light faster. The ping and the latency is too high between all those countries to play effectively. So you've got some problems based around that too. So esports as a whole has a lot more attention, but not necessarily massively booming as you might see because of some of those problems. Online, yes, up, but live things down. So think about companies that are doing live production. Think about ones that are doing ticketing and travel, and are doing staff management and things like that too. They're definitely struggling. Influencers, man, 4-5 billion% up. It's crazy. The CPM is down across like YouTube for most of the influencers that we work with, maybe 20-30%. But a lot of them, their viewership is up 20, 30, 50 to 100%.
What's CPM?
So CPM is the cost per million, which basically means how many dollars per 1,000 views are served on YouTube. So a lot of them have CPMs that are dropping even up to 70%. So it means that they're making 70% less kind of money coming month to month. Wow. And an influencer we work with, one of my friends who lives in Australia, he's earning about 6 to 8 grand a month USD off CPM. So that could be dropping, by 50, even up to 70%. That's off his second channel, of course. It's not his main channel because this kid loves to make money. He's good at it. But if you transpose that with brand deals, so many more brand deals coming through, and the influencers are happy to take a lower dollar amount to try to offset that money. They're not losing, but they're not gaining, if that makes sense. Year on year, they're dropping in CPMs. They're trying to make that up with extra brand deals. So they're dropping prices, but there's also more interest in brand deals coming through too. So, we worked with companies like Capacity, working with Life Cycle at the moment, who's like a mushroom supplementation company, doing a lot of work with Unicorn, who's a gambling company in esports. Doing a lot of work with OMD, an agency in Dubai, with some of their brands now are quite interested, from Mercedes to PepsiCo to some others too. A lot of interest into that influencer area, and the viewership is just up massively. Like, not even just for influencers, but for media. I used to work for a website called tweaktown.com, which is a lot of, if you're not a hardcore tech nerd, you probably won't like it at all. It's a lot of reviews on motherboards and graphics cards and internal components, but, they're up like 100% viewership. There's another website and good friends with .esports, who are owned by Gamers Group, GAMURS Group. Riyad Shikani posted their stats there for them and for GamePer, who they own, and they're up like 300% of time on site and people, sorry, not time on site, but I think uniques. So the numbers are just exploding because everybody's at home and people want to watch content. People want to watch people do exciting things. What are people doing in other countries? They want to be entertained, and it doesn't seem like esports is necessarily the answer for a lot of those people. It's the content creators.
Yeah, even in regards to influencers, I saw. I know it's not gaming, but Joe Rogan sold himself to Spotify for $100 million, and I read that apparently it brought like $5 billion into Spotify. So really, I wouldn't say he's worth $5 billion, but it really just goes to show that branding wise, personal brands are going to be huge, and it seems like that's what's been going. Obviously, it's translated into influencers for gaming, and
he thinks like a gamer. I mean, there's so many things. Like if you look at one thing resonated with me really well that he says. If you look at what his overheads are, besides his cool facility he has with his Navy SEAL security guards and all that kind of stuff, he's got him, Jamie, and 2 video editors. That's it. So he made $100 million buyout of him, Jamie, and 2 video editors. That's all. And if you compare that to, say, Laserbeam, someone like Laserbeam, with the CPM that he's getting, everything else, if he's not making 25 million a year, I'd be shocked. He has not a full-time manager, and he has a couple of editors that work with him, and he can create content off a $5,000 PC at home, and he's the star. If you compare that to Love Island, you need to get everyone to the island. You need to hire the stuff. You need 30 cameras. You need production crew. You need to pay for all of the equipment, all of the staff to go there. You need 7 script writers. You need a producer. You need 10 editors, like all that stuff, just to get, they peak at 1 million views per episode. Granted, they are restricted just to Australia, but there's no reason only Australians could watch it. It's just about things that people love. It's sexy people hooking up. But if you compare that to Laserbeam, he literally, like I made some content about this. He made a video of him reacting to TikToks. How long would have that taken him? An hour? It's a 10-minute video. Shoots it off to his editor. They publish it. The next day, it's got 5.5 million views. Boom, he's made 100 grand. Like that's all it takes him. How long does it take for a news.com.au article to come out? There's got to be the editor's got to write it, and the senior editor's got to approve it, and then the lead editor has to read through and make sure it's okay, and then press publish. And they've got people selling ads on the platform, and they've got a CEO hierarchy and a board and all this stuff. Laserbeam's got none of that. It's just him. Makes a tweet. He's like, I want some cool as fuck TikToks to watch. His fans will send them to him. He'll react to them. He makes 100 grand. And obviously that's the top of the pile. But it's the similar with news. Not everyone's making big bank in news either. But it just gives you an idea that the overheads are so low for these kind of guys. Like, I've got a mate who's in his early 20s. I taught him how to run an invoice a couple of weeks ago. He's going to make 800 grand this year. He's buying a house cash. He's settling today, I think. And one of the conditions for settlement is the internet fast enough, because it only had like 5 upload, and he's like, if you can't get 13, I'm not buying the house. It's like a 4-bedroom house with a pool in a CBD location. I don't want to dox him too much, but he's going to make 800 grand this year. He doesn't even know how to run an invoice. And what are his overheads? He edits all his own videos. He makes all his own content. At the moment, he lives at home with his dad, and he helps to look after his little brother. And he drives a Toyota 86 that he obviously bought in cash.
Yeah, far out. And then in regards to this, is this the peak, or have we just not begun? Like, where are we?
It's nowhere near the peak, because the way I would explain it is, I'm millennial, I was born in 91. My generation is the last generation of non-gamers. There's people that I went to school with who would be like, nah, fuck games, they're for nerds, they're stupid. It's not like that anymore. Talking to 18-year-olds, they don't necessarily classify themselves as gamers the same way that you and I wouldn't say, hi, my name's Chris, I'm a car driver. It's like, of course you can drive a car. You're old enough and you live in Melbourne. Of course you can drive a car. Or I'm from Tasmania. There's shit all public transport there. So of course you can drive a car. And the same thing with these guys, with gamers, guys and girls. They're like, of course I play Fortnite. Of course I play Minecraft. Of course I, had Candy Crush on the iPad and played that for 400 hours. Because it's just part of the culture. So now it's no longer like gaming is that nerdy activity that only some people do. Like everyone's a gamer. It's just how serious you get with it. So it means your total available market, your TAM, is just huge. It's gigantic. So you feel like FaZe, you sit in that angle where they're cool. They got lots of chicks. They got Lambos. They're making bank. They're wearing gold chains. Offset is one of their investors. Yo Gotti is one of their investors. So Yo Gotti's latest YouTube video, or one of his latest, called Pose, for his song. Look it up. There's FaZe. There's 4 FaZe guys standing in that video.
No way.
They're hanging out with people like that. That's the type of content they make. And then there's other content like Dr. Disrespect, where he's got that type of the market. So, if you're interested in Lambos, you're interested in rap, you're interested in Yeezys, but also gaming, go to FaZe Clan. Like they're going to be able to speak your language as to what you want. So we're definitely not at the peak. As well as, as far as technology goes, for those in India and Africa, the technology adoption in there is absolutely off the charts. Every year there's so many more of these, 1 billion plus continents or countries that are getting access to internet who's never had it before. So like a case study to look at is PewDiePie, who's the most subscribed YouTuber in the world, versus T-Series, which is basically a YouTube channel that collates, shares, and produces Indian music videos. T-Series has over 100 million subscribers just in a couple of years, and their viewership is intense, and that's just growing because not every Indian has access to the internet yet. It's still an emerging market, so it's growing massively.
Then what happens? Let's go into sports. What happens to the traditional sports and compared to esports? Is esports going to take over it? Is there a chance esports is going to be larger than it? And if so, what do you think is going to happen? Because I'm getting these weird things that I think we're going to have gamers that are, or sports soccer players through gaming that's going to be probably making more money than Cristiano Ronaldo, whoever that is. He won't be around in 5-10 years time, but I could probably see that happening. What are your thoughts? And
100%. It's not going to replace it entirely, but it's going to be much bigger. And it's because if you look at it from performance marketing perspectives, that's where so many things are moving to anymore. Influencers and celebrities, they can't act like a billboard anymore. You used to be able to just say, well, of course, Kim Kardashian is worth paying. I mean, she's probably a shit example. Like think like Hugh Jackman, for example. How often does Hugh Jackman go live on Instagram and interact with his fans? How many meetups does he do? How many times is he, hey guys, welcome to my vlog. I'm driving around in my Toyota today. Check out the new RAV4. Like it's just come out. Come and see me on meetup at Westfield next weekend. Like, thanks. Like shout out to Fitbit for sending me a new watch. Like, all that kind of stuff. Like you don't see that. And the allure of these celebrities is that they come for their twice a year Wolverine on the screen. They go off to their Hollywood Hills mansion. You never hear from them again unless there's some TMZ, scandal that happens around that. And that started to change with Paris Hilton, and then changed even more with the likes of Kim Kardashian and then Nicki Minaj and now Cardi B. I feel like that's almost like a flowchart on from one to the other, where Cardi B, especially with WAP, is like the thing now. And if you look at that and you look at these TikTok talent, we did some work with a TikTok talent who's got 1.7 mil, I think, on TikTok now. She creates like up to 8 pieces of content per day, at minimum around 5. She's doing 2 to 3 TikToks. She goes live on TikTok once or twice a day. She's posting on LinkedIn. She's doing like weekly YouTube videos. She's posting on Twitter. She's doing Instagram stories and Instagram posts, like nonstop, because people want access to them like 24/7. And you don't get that with sports celebrities. When's the last time you saw like an AFL player who was like a number 25 pick, going out and getting that personal sponsorship, going out to YD, doing some collabs with them? You don't see that. You don't see that unless it's Favola. You don't see that unless it's Dustin Martin or Eddie Maguire or someone like that, right? But in gaming and esports, it's super common. Players in the tier 2 leagues will have a mouse sponsor, and they'll be like, hey, check out the new Logitech mouse, use my code for 10% off, and they'll get a kickback. It's very common for people in the grassroots to do that. But you don't see that very often unless they're highly commercially orientated, like a very few examples, like Shaquille O'Neal, who was coming to Australia pre-coronavirus, like David Beckham. And I mean, they're probably the 2 most obvious examples. They've got lots of fragrances. They're in lots of ads, like all that kind of stuff. Maybe Warney, you see him quite a bit. Maybe Ricky Ponting, you see him quite a bit, like Rexona and stuff. But you can name those. That's across like 20 sports. You can name those people on 2 hands. Usain Bolt maybe as well. These kind of guys. But in esports and gaming, it's happening all the time. They're doing their own streaming, which they're monetizing. They're doing, they're creating their own leagues where people can join leagues, and they're monetizing that and play competitions underneath them. They're opening, one of the most famous Counter-Strike players in the world, Fallen, he has his own gaming academy in Brazil, which helps underprivileged kids out of the favelas to become better Counter-Strike players. Like, you don't, and he's not someone who's earning $40 million a year. So imagine if he was earning $40 million a year, how much he could be doing, and how much the people who come to his level will be doing, when they come to that size. So it definitely won't replace traditional sports, but a lot of traditional sports is legacy. And there's a great article I read in the past that made sense, which is, I guess, the age of cool in sports is over, or starting to be over, where a CEO of a company will be a fan of Essendon, and that's the sole reason why that company sponsors Essendon. Because that doesn't fly anymore. You can't just be a billboard. You can't just sponsor it just for the coolness factor. There's got to be some more behind it. There's got to be like some ROI. There's got to be some proper marketing. There's got to be some returns happening on that too. And that's what we're seeing, with all the companies we're working with. They want guarantees. They want guarantees on viewership. They want guarantees on link clicks. They want guarantees on sales, or at least like a best guess with case studies, where in the past it's just been like, hey, Laserbeam, can you do a 30-second pre-roll for me? And he'll be like, yeah, that's 40 grand, which is likely what he charges in USD. And then you just pay that, and you say, hey, can I see demographics? And that's the best you're going to get. But now, like, a lot of the brands are like, no, we want you to guarantee 100,000 link clicks. And if it doesn't happen, you need to make some tweets about it, or you need to, do some other stuff. You can't just be a billboard anymore. You have to be accountable, which is, it's how the rest of the world works. It's how banner ads work. It's how Facebook ads work. Imagine if you went to Facebook and you plugged in, I'm going to put $3 million into Facebook advertising for my drop shipping. And then they were just like, cool. And that's it. And they deserved it. They didn't tell you how many people you're going to reach. They didn't tell you where they lived. Like, of course, that's not going to work. So, but it's the allure of cool. And there are some great case studies. Like I said, FaZe sold $1 million in a day. But you just need some guarantees on both sides. Guarantees on both sides. Both people have to take a risk here, and that's a lot of the work that we do. Where, say with Unicorn betting company, extremely numbers based, where we will work with a person, an influencer, and we'll pay them 30% less than their normal rate, but we provide them with an astronomical commission. Like, I mean, astronomical compared to what these other people will pay, and we'll help them with sales targets and say, look, if you get to this, let's do a month trial with you. You're getting some money up front, so we're not wasting your time entirely. We're giving you a huge commission base. Here are commissions that other people are earning with direct examples. Here's some videos. Here's how they did it. We will write the scripts for you. We'll help you out anyway. Here's how much commission we think you should make, which is usually 2x what we're paying them up front. If it works in a month, let's sign on for 3. If it works for 3, let's sign on with another 3, and do some work. And man, that is hard sometimes to convince. It's taken me 3 months to convince people to do that. But now we're working with one guy, a CSGO YouTuber in the Netherlands. We're paying him $3,000 a month, and he just made $6,000 commission, 6,600 commission USD. So, It works, but you just have to drill it into their head sometimes.
That's insane. And let's talk about yourself. Your LinkedIn content, or just your content in general at the moment, has been going crazy. What's your social marketing strategies, and what's your campaigns, and what are you trying to achieve out of what you're putting out?
Mm-hmm. So LinkedIn right now is probably 70% of our clients and 80% of our revenue, like direct leads coming from LinkedIn. And that's what we use it for. So LinkedIn's been through a few stages from my understanding. Is in the past, it was a digital resume. You would only add people who you've worked with. You would give them endorsements for Microsoft Excel and Word and marketing, and maybe write a recommendation, and they would do the same. And you would never add anyone you haven't worked with. And then it became add everyone you can to build an audience. And now it's become almost like a pseudo kind of influencer / lead generation platform, which is exactly how I've used it over that period. So I started only adding people I knew and worked with. Then it got a bit wider to adding people within the companies that I worked with, but kind of knew, maybe see them in email chains and didn't. And then started adding everyone, and then started target adding people within industries. So I want to get in contact with more AFL teams. So I'd have the AFL teams up on my left monitor. All right, okay, Essendon. So I would go into LinkedIn, type in Essendon, and then I would add digital marketing, social media, CEO, et cetera, to start to connect with those kind of people. And then what I started doing was every time I would read an article that I thought helped me, gave me some information, I would just share it on my LinkedIn. Push it out there. If it gives me info, it probably helps someone else out too. And now that's kind of changed and evolved over time to start to push out like a lot of our own content. So usually like my posting philosophy on LinkedIn is I will find an article, I'll share it with dot points to easily break it down, 3 to 5 dot points for someone with a tagline at the top. I'll put in some extra information that maybe only I know or you can't get even by reading the article. And then I'll post a nice photo, and then obviously I will always link and credit the article as well. So it means that someone probably gets more information by reading my post that takes them 10 seconds than it does to take 5 minutes to read through the whole article. They also know that I am on beat with all the information that's happening around the world because we share a lot of content. They also know that I know what I'm talking about because I add some extra tidbits of information in there. So if you're like Playside Studios, who we're in partnership with, Jerry sends me a message, the CEO, and says, hey, Chris, we want to get into esports. I've seen you posting a ton about it. You seem like you know what you're talking about. Come in and chat to me. And now we're in partnership, and we're physically based out of their offices when it's not coronavirus. Obviously, I'm at home in the home studio at the moment. So that's how we get a lot of our work. I said the Dubai client we're working with, LinkedIn, Saudi movie cinema company, LinkedIn, working on a reality show, Brazilian reality show with the Spanish and US company, LinkedIn. A lot of our work's coming through there. So now we're posting what we call like carousels, which are those images you can kind of scroll through, which really are like a PDF on LinkedIn. We're working on a lot of YouTube videos as well. You can see part of my scene behind me with the cool gamer stuff. My purple lighting that sits around here. And, also sharing like a lot of news as well. And, video is a lot of the future for that stuff. People like it, but not everyone wants to watch a video. So we share a lot of tech stuff as well. And it's been going super well for us.
Good on you. Just for anybody that's probably listening, if they ever wanted to get into esports or gaming or anything of that jazz, like what exactly do you do that you could probably people can come and have a chat to you about?
Sure. Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/Smithy Mayo. So Smithy is in my last name with a Y, then Mayo is my gaming name.
Into the bio as well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, or Smithy Mayo on Twitter or Instagram, wherever. But the same as what we talked about is that esports and gaming is just business. So just find the angle. My lawyer that I use, he's a sports lawyer, but he has a lot of knowledge and interest in esports and influencers. So that's why I use him in there. But he never stopped working in NRL. He's never stopped working in cricket. He's never stopped working in tennis. My accountant, the same. He's an angel investor in an esports team, but one of his largest clients is a bunch of Harvey Norman franchises. But it's because he's a gamer. If you're looking at that, funnily enough, there's a massive link recently between gaming and real estate as well. A bunch of gamers are going into real estate. I don't know why. It must be the pull, must be the lure of the industry. But there's always angles to get in there. So let's say that you're, and I mean this is common. We talked about this with Ford models. They're essentially an influencer agency. And went, well, what do we know? We know talent. We know brands. So let's just go get some esports talent and connect them with brands. The movie cinema company came to me and they're like, hey, we've got all these screens and all this space. How can we attract gamers to here? How can we do something else that involves us with this? Look at the Adelaide Crows. They bought an esports team. The Adelaide Crows are like, what do we know? Sports teams, obviously. Let's go buy an esports team and put them in and then sell sponsorships across. So Optus sponsors both. Across the Crows and across Legacy, which is their esports team. So just find that angle that interests you, and usually what I say to junior people who want to get a job in the space is pick one thing and stick with it. With me, it was commentary. I was like, I love doing commentary, and I stuck with one company called Net Game Radio, and I just kept asking them to do more every time. I was like, hey guys, I really want to review games. Can I just post them on here? They went, if you want to do it, do it. I said, hey guys, I'm getting into Counter-Strike. You guys don't cast that. Can I get in there? They're like, if you want to do the work, you can do that. And then I was like, hey guys, your marketing manager left. Once again, a volunteer position. I've got interest in that. And they went, well, if you want to do it, go and do it. So, literally just making my own holes in the space and then filling them. And similar when I was at Tweaktown, I was doing just news and audio reviews, like headsets and stuff. And then the guy who did smartphones and smartwatches, he picked up graphics cards. And I was like, hey, Anthony, you're obviously really busy and now you're more busy. Can I take the old thing off you because you don't care about phones that much anymore? He's like, yeah, you can do it. So literally, like, the way to get ahead a lot of the time is just pick up the pieces. And I mean, Jocko Willink talks about this a lot and stuff too. If you just make your boss look good, if you ask your boss, hey, what's the menial task you hate the most? Can I do it for you? Like that's a great way to get into the industry. So to recap, I guess, from both sides, like, one, like, happy to have people reach out to me, but just find a parallel into what you currently do. If you're like Manny and James from Elias Skin and you do supply chain and you do drop shipping and you do selling, do that, but in gaming. Sell keyboards. So, create merchandise, sell that. If you are into sports management, manage players. Or if you want to get in as a job, everybody wants volunteers. There's a very common thing of a lot of people like to talk down about doing free internships and people should be paid and yada yada. Like I don't have either stance on that argument because I don't really care that much, because I did so much volunteer work that got me to where I am today that I would have not got here if I went, no, I need to be paid $20 an hour. As long as you're getting something out of it yourself, volunteer work's perfectly fine. Like no one does volunteer work for free. People do it to put on their resume. People do it to get ahead in the industry. So it's perfectly fine, but you need to get something out of it at the same time too. So those are the two pathways of entry for me.
And you touched on just before, just in regards to Adelaide Football Club bringing in a team. Essendon Football Club did it as well. They failed. Or not, well, they could have failed. They shut it down. So it was something of sorts. What happened there, and what are we starting to see with Adelaide? I'm sure it'll probably follow suit with other football clubs and maybe soccer clubs. I know it's happened actually. There's Melbourne City. They've got a league. How does that all work?
Yep. So the Bombers won. I think that they didn't necessarily pick the right angle, maybe not the right games to invest in, maybe are a bit too big too early. And we've seen that, we saw that with Gfinity here in Australia. Gfinity is a UK esports tournament that came to Australia. It was partnership with Hoyts, the cinema chain, and Here, There, and Everywhere was one of the major shareholders of it, which owns, I think KISS radio station in Sydney, some newspapers, some billboards, some other stuff too. They were way too big too early, those guys, and that's why they shut down. It just cost too much to do. The market couldn't sustain it, and they were too focused on esports, not enough on gaming. I did a little bit of pre-consultancy for a few different parties based around that too, so I can speak as kind of an insider without signing any NDAs or giving too much away, I guess. But I feel that Essendon did a lot of the same stuff too. Is it's exciting. The compound annual growth rate is exciting. The market is growing, the tournaments are big, but still understanding like there's a difference between gaming and esports. And there's a niche. We're planning a reality show for a game in Brazil at the moment. We've got some partnerships with some of the top FIFA players in the world cooking. But understanding for us that that's not a hardcore esports platform. We can't pretend that it's going to be hardcore esports because it's reality. There's got to be some drama in there. And we want to maintain some competitive integrity to make sure we actually make the players better. It's not just like a sex fest or something like that, but it's actually got some esports competitive integrity behind it, and they become better players at the end, and they get signed onto a pro contract, something like that, win some money, change their life. But we can't pretend that it's pure esports competition, because there was an AFL show like that, right? Like the Recruit or something like that.
There's been a soccer one before as well, where they win a contract.
Yeah, exactly. So some stuff like that too, right? So you got to find those right balances. So there will be more. There's so many agencies that are coming into the space as well. Dare Ice Coffee and Icebreak. They're through traditional agencies. They're massively into the space. Twitch TV is expanding hugely into here. They've got 2 partnership managers, a sales manager, a sales director, and now a marketing manager in Australia. I mean, in 2014 they had 1 partnership manager, because he started like 3 days after I started at my last full-time job at Corsair. Lewis, he's a champion. So there's so much more expansion coming in that space. I mean, even the NBL, they broadcast all of their matches on Twitch now, and they're achieving like 600 to 1,000 concurrent viewers a lot of the time. If you've got 600 to 1,000 concurrent viewers as a solo influencer, you should be making 100 to 300 grand a year.
Wow.
So, if you compare that just alone, it's not 1-to-1, because it's different commerciality. It's different. You're not going to get as many paying subscribers because you're a sport, you're not a person. But, it gives you an idea. We manage a guy who's going to make 300 grand this year, who has 700 concurrent viewers, but he's very, very commercially minded, has an older audience that will buy higher price products and donate more money. But still, top of the crop, just gives you something to aim for. So there's definitely going to be a lot more of that. And you're right too. All of the A-League teams, they participate in the E-League competition, which in its first season got more digital viewership than the A-League did in its like however many seasons it had. So that's either really good or really bad, depending which way you look at it, from the A-League perspective or the E-League perspective.
Talk to me about the E-League. Is there like FIFA? It's not that big of a game, is it? In compared to a lot of the games, and where does that sit in esports or gaming?
So the way to think about like a game and its esports audience is what percentage of players are likely to be interested or compete in esports. So if you say like, how many fans of the AFL are active competitors in the professional scene, or active fans in more than just their local footy club. So you've got some games like StarCraft 2, which is a very high skill ceiling and also very high entry level. It's a hard game to understand. It's got a really high percentage of casual fans who are also esports fans, because it's just really hard to do. And likely if you've got that drive to learn the game, you've got the drive to learn more about it and become a better player. Whereas a game like FIFA is the opposite. It's one of the biggest games in the entire world. It's huge, but the percentage of esports interest is very low. But because the total available market of the game is huge, like there's so much opportunity in there. And also there's so many tie-ins between the professional scene, between the traditional space. Danny Alves, who I've been told is one of or the most decorated football player in history. He owns an esports team that he's the face of called Good Crazy, and he's also involved with S2V. Neymar Jr. is friends with an esports team called Furia in Brazil and has done quite a few appearances with them. It's very common, for these guys and girls to be involved, with that kind of space. So it's got a massive market. And once again, that means that it doesn't necessarily have to be hardcore esports. It can be casual, because how many people love just, have it sinking a couple of beers, having pizza with their mates and shit talking on FIFA, whether in person or ordering Uber Eats and doing it over the internet. Like it's a massive casual game, and that's okay to be like that too. But it just means it's different than Counter-Strike or Overwatch or League of Legends, which are much more hardcore esports.
Wow. Do you see, as we go on, is FIFA going to be? Could it be one of those games that it's going to play a massive role in this, or is it always just going to be that very casual type of game?
I don't think it's going to cross the same boundaries, because once again, it's sitting like within that. It's sitting within that middle sphere.
Yeah.
It's big in its own right, but it's definitely not a tier 1 esport. Like the world champion for the last 2 years in a row is a guy from Saudi. He's got a significant following, and he's obviously got that niche as well because he creates content specific for his area. Very similar to how, say, Khabib is massive, in the Muslim community globally, because he's like a Muslim poster child because he's a fantastic fighter and also the same religion, right? So he has that same thing, but still they're not. You don't find the depth where it's like, the 16th best player in the world has 1 million followers on Twitter. You don't find that, but you can in a game like Counter-Strike where the top 20 players can all have 200,000 plus Twitter followers, but you don't have that in something like FIFA. You might have a few at the top, and kind of similar to AFL, right? Like unless you're Brendan Favola or someone like that, most AFL players have like 2,000 Twitter followers. They don't have that many.
Yeah, 10, 15,000 Instagram followers, 8,000. Yeah, and it's funny. I've always thought that why don't they get so much more press? Like, is it because they're bound by, for example, Richmond, where they can't, or is it's just a thing that they've never gone out and?
A lot of the time is they don't understand and they don't have the motivation and don't know what's available to them. And this is what happens with players a lot of the time too. Like, I did some content with a previous world champion in a game called Dota 2, which has like a yearly competition that has up to a $35 million prize pool. And he said, he was like, look, Chris, there's so much money to be made in prize money that they don't give a shit about streaming. They don't want to suck up to a brand for a $3,000 deal when if they win the international, it's $1 million in your pocket per player. So they'd rather spend all their time trying to become a better player. They don't care about Twitter. A lot of them are quite reserved too. So it just, so it just really depends. But you're right in that, I think they should do more. And we're starting to see a little bit like the AFL Gamers Network. You're seeing a lot of these players stream and create content. MMA, I think, is leading the space a lot in that too, because the fighters are sole contractors. They get paid just to turn up and fight. And sometimes they get paid shit all to turn up and fight. So they're really looking for other ways. And we've worked with Rob Whittaker in the past, Tyson Pedro, two great Aussie fighters. Just had another brand deal email come through right now for another female MMA fighter who's fighting on a main card coming up soon. Another Aussie who's also a gamer, and that kind of stuff too. So, they're creating a lot of content. You see Sean O'Malley creating a ton of content. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is global names. Max Holloway streaming himself playing games. So, I think they're leading the way a lot there.
Have you seen? I've seen Nick Kyrgios. He's been playing with
bit of COD.
Yeah.
He's not bad actually. He's pretty good. Surprisingly, because to be honest, a lot of them are pretty shit. But he's good.
He's all right.
Yeah.
So
everyone says they're a lot better at games than they are, because you can tell straight away. Like I get this. It's really awkward because sometimes people will be like, "Oh, Chris used to be a pro. Like, can you play games against my friend that says they're really good?" And every time you're like, "Please no," because I know they're going to be terrible, and I have to be nice.
You're just quick scoping them, just fucking around with them.
How many guys who say that they're good at picking up chicks actually are? It's the same with gaming, right? You have to brag about it. Man. You have to brag about how rich you are and how good you are at picking up chicks. Like, unless you're Dan Blazarian, like, it's not going to happen.
I get the concept, man. It's everyone that's for the standard people that are flashing how rich they are in the room. Generally, they're the ones that just don't have as much. So I understand the concept. What makes a successful organization? Like, you've been talking about FaZe Clan and all these companies they partnered up with Neymar and Danny Alves and all that jazz. Is it a very similar business model to traditional? Like, even for example, like sporting clubs, is it a very similar run model?
It has been in the past, but it's changing for good reason. So in the past, teams have been raising, as far as, like I said, the valuations, a team like FaZe is valued at $240 million, according to Forbes. If you Google like Forbes esports team valuation, you can see all these numbers, and Forbes says they make somewhere like 30 mil revenue. The largest esports team in the world is Cloud9, valued at 400, but they're losing a lot of money. They all are. And it's because it's hard just to focus on those 12 to 36 month traditional sports sponsorships when there's so much money to be made in content out there. So that's why teams like FaZe and 100 Thieves and a few others and NRG are focusing so hard on the content angle, because you can monetize individual content pieces that go out. And you don't have to be stuck to just say Toyota, because you could do a 30-second pre-roll for Ferrari, and then you could also do a live event meetup for Lamborghini. And then you could also do some singular Twitter posts through one of your 30 influencers for Toyota. So you can be monetizing off all three of those, but keep them separate enough that it's not too confusing. And that's quite common. You know, FaZe Clan helped to launch the Rebel Whopper in the US. They did like a month-long campaign. There's no reason that right now, after a couple months break, FaZe couldn't work with Macca's to do their next 16-block lineup meetup at Macca's, obviously after coronavirus is over, or you know, order some food at home with Uber Eats. But you can't do that if you're stuck to that 12-month long-term sponsorship. If you're stuck to NIB Insurance as Richmond, you can't do a quick content hit piece on another brand. And that's what, you know, we've been talking to Sydney Sixers about this as well. We're like, come on, guys, you got 1 million followers on Facebook. Do some content. Like, what are you doing? Stop trying to sell $300,000 sponsorships and sell $20,000, $30,000 pre-rolls and you know, campaigns and things like that. And yeah, it takes more work, but ultimately the payoff is more money and access. You've got assets sitting there that aren't being sold. So once again, it goes down to the players being active too, because then the organization acts as a pseudo influencer manager. It's illegal in California, especially for an employer to also be a manager. So you can't, you know, FaZe is actually in a legal suit around this with a large creator called Tafui around this, and that's part of him wanting to exit the contract. Is he's saying, look, they were trying to manage me and be my employer at the same time. That's illegal. You need a talent management license in California to do that, which I assume is because of Hollywood and all that kind of stuff. But you know, looking at that, you can still act as a pseudo one where you've got semi-contractors. You know, we helped to sign a deal with an esports team that straight out said to us, we split some of the money directly with the players to pay them to create content for this brand. You know, so it goes much deeper than just signing up a junior AFL player on a 60 grand salary. It's a 60 grand salary plus bonuses. It's 60 plus, hey, we're going to try to get you 40 grand in appearances and deals and this kind of stuff. Rather than, you know, in the past, how often do you see the Melbourne Storm doing meetups and going to things? You know, they might go to one charity thing. They'll send one or two of their blokes across to like a Toyota meetup or whoever they're sponsored by these days, and stuff like that too. But now it's like, it's always on. And as part of the contracts, these guys are having to be like, hey, you know, we're sponsored by Corsair, you know, check out my Corsair headset I'm wearing while I'm playing. Like, they have to make those tweets as part of being signed to that team. So there's so much more capacity for that kind of stuff. And some people will then see that, like you said with Shroud, that example before, and then quit being a pro player because they're like, I can make a bunch more money and have much more fun just screwing around on Apex Legends than I can being a CSGO pro.
Content. And wow, okay, so that's actually very interesting. When you break that down, there is a bit of a change in the models where a lot of these sporting clubs are still very traditional. And all these, wow, I didn't know that. Now that you think about it, it makes complete sense. Talk to me about the Shade House concept. Now, this was a concept. Well, actually, I'll let you explain it. I know it, bloody man. Sure. I'll let you explain
it. So Shade and Shade Crew was taking a lot of those concepts from FaZe, which is how do we take traditional market interest and traditional influencer interest and bring it across into gaming and help to unlock the fact that a lot of people are gamers. They just don't necessarily talk about it a lot of the time. So, you know, we got a house in Brighton on the waterfront, a couple doors down from Ricky Ponting, apparently, someone told me. And we signed on a bunch of talent and launched the company with Jerry from Playside Studios as the CEO of this company and CEO of Playside currently, with support from him, with support from the Angry Dad boys as well. So Mitch Orville just had a kid, very cute. Check him out on Instagram. With Mitch's brother as well, Dylan, and then their dad involved in the periphery. Also with Josh Miller, Steph Claire Smith's at the time fiance, now husband. Shane Warne's son, Jackson Warne. And a few other guys who work in the photography space as well. Tina, who's a cosplayer. So a real ragtag bunch of people. So there were some good and some bad and some fantastic learnings from this. It was, you know, we went as far as the content goes, and Jerry agrees, and he talks about this, I think, in the No Limits podcast with Leo, who I believe you've had on here. And, you know, too hard too early, went too hard too early, and didn't necessarily have the right mix of fans. It was a little bit too non-gaming mix of talent, a little bit too much non-gaming talent. Where FaZe, they're birthed from like the grassroots of 16-year-old nerds playing games in their mum's basement up to now they're attracting interest from Offset and Yo Gotti and things like that. Where we were like a little bit opposite, so it didn't resonate as well with the audience. And then obviously the overheads, to create something like that are quite extensive. The advantage of influencer agencies is you're not paying salaries to a talent like you are with pro gamers, but still you gotta, it's not a cheap house to maintain. We had a nice fit out. And all that kind of stuff as well. So, there's some fantastic learnings from that. And we're slowly making more money than we spent on that in consultancy and teaching people our lessons. So, and I mean, that's a great lesson in failure as a business person. That was my first big failure, I think, as a startup founder. And that really messed me up for, I reckon, 6 months. I would think about it all the time. Every time I'd hear the word shade, I would cringe. I hated it so much because it was like, I can't believe I failed. Like, I'm an expert. Like, how did I fail at something? I'm an expert. And then you go through the whole, well, it's not my fault. It's the other person's fault. It's the talent's fault. They're stupid. They didn't want to create 40 videos a day, or it's Jerry's fault because, he's the CEO. But it's like, no, like, it's your idea, Chris. It's your company. It was 50% your money. So you need to take responsibility. And, it was a lot of, I guess, introspection, thinking about a lot of that stuff. And it does make it scary to try new things. But, that's also why you build a safety net. And that's why, you do these things as an entrepreneur, to try and to fail. But I've never failed bigger than just like canceling a small event or something like that before. So a lot of good learnings. And a lot of our really good learnings too is bringing across a traditional talent, whether in influencer, as in like Instagrammers, YouTubers, or sports celebrities. How does that convert across to gaming? We had Shane Warne playing twice at the house, for example, with his son. The stream blew up because a bunch of meme pages picked it up, like cricket memes. There was a great one, which is like, question, why is Shane Warne streaming Fortnite on a Friday night? And another question is, why am I watching him? And things like that too. But, you see the attention drop off because yes, hey, old sporty boomer, he's playing Fortnite. It's really funny. But then after an hour, okay, Shane Warne doesn't actually know how to change weapons in game or build a ramp. Like, this is starting to get a bit old. So there's like that, there's like that kind of limit, as well as with the talent understanding that's very different to go live on Twitch 5 days a week than it is to create video content, because video content you're on for that 1, 2, 3 hours of filming, but then you get to sit back and edit it and look at that. But when you're live on stream, it's very different. You're reading comments all the time. You need to go live the same time every night. If you turn on the TV at 6 p.m. and the news is not on, you're like, what the hell? Like, the same with these content creators too, right? Ninja, when he was blowing up, was streaming 7 hours a week, like 9 to 12 hours a day. So you need to, it's a very different way of thinking and creating content. And the audience doesn't always transfer across 100%. And we could see that growth curve of like Mitch, who was our largest talent. You can see from stream 1, 2, 3, it starts at high, but where does it bottom out? And then where you can build up from there. And he has a fantastic base, but then it's coaching and educating through that kind of platform and that kind of stuff too. So yeah, a lot of good learnings. I'd do it again, but just slightly different.
That was gonna be my next question. Would you do it again, and how would you do it differently? And because there are houses in Australia, I know there's some gamers in Sydney that are doing very well. You showed me them last time we met. So it is possible. It's not like do you feel like Australia was a little bit too early for it as well?
No, it's not necessarily to do with Australia, because once again, it's global reach and viewership. Like a Click House, which you're talking about in Sydney, they're in a $15 million house in Darling Harbour. There was 5 talent living in that house, 5 of the biggest YouTubers in Australia. But, I have their audience data. It's like 60% plus is US, then there's UK, Canada, rest of the world, and then there's Australia, which is maybe like 5, 10% of their viewership, sometimes up to 13 if you're lucky. But and there's another group in Melbourne called the Misfits, who were also in a house for a while. Very similar size, slightly smaller, massive rabid fan audience and different market. But no, definitely not too big too early as far as esports goes, because of the global reach. Just needs a slight change. What I would do is I would create videos and develop the Shade crew first before moving into a house, but also understanding, as far as a whole, the house only has a certain amount of time. Because you think about it, like, you're 18, 19, you're making some good money, you get excited, you want to join in a house together. How long does that last? Like, how long do you want to live in a house with 4 other really loud people who love to have parties all the time, who are creating content 7 days a week, who really go nonstop? They're flying around, they're doing brand deals, they're bringing girls home, like all this kind of stuff, right? There's only like a certain amount of time you can do that. And a lot of it for mental health, because you're like, hey, I want a dog. I can't get a dog. Hey, I'm getting serious with this girl. she can't live here because I'm living with 4 other blokes who are 18 years old, things like that too. So a lot of the time these houses are almost like an incubator to really like explode people and they go out. Houses are not that common anymore. They might have an office where they all create content from and that kind of stuff. But yeah, they don't necessarily have like these long-term houses that last for years and years. I think the Click House maybe lasted for a year and a half. Misfits House, pretty similar. And the FaZe has the house for the longest time. But the latest one is NRG, which is an esports team overseas, CEO'd by Andy Miller. They're doing some fantastic work, and they've just announced a Fortnite house, which is a massive thing because houses aren't that much of a concept anymore. So they're going reverse, but it's doing well. I think their announcement video has like 1.2 million views in the first 2 days. It was trending on top 10 on in America on YouTube and things like that too. So they're doing well.
So would it be a lot of them? They've just got clubhouses and stuff like that, or like as you said, offices, and they keep it. Yeah. Is it? Yeah, because I remember even as an agent where I manage some properties. We chucked in some gamers, but they all never last. They all literally lasted a year max. I think there was about 3 of them. One of them broke the lease. They just. And that's I was just so I was very curious.
At least they didn't break the house with a massive party.
No, they were okay. They left. They looked after the house, but unfortunately, I can't remember the company. It was the same company every single time that they'd come to us, and we just put them in. But yeah, it just never worked out. But what's next? What's next for you? We're nowhere near the peak. What's next? What's coming? And what do we want to achieve by the end?
There's a few concepts I'm looking at. One's a reality show. Another one is that I've been researching a long time is around just a general theme of the UFC of esports, taking some ideas of how UFC do things and how you can push them across into esports. I think there's so many similarities there. And also alternative monetary streams to influencers is something we're looking at too, around merchandising, around high quality merchandise, different types, not just jackets and hoodies, but different types of ways for them to create money. And also monitoring, like say what Playside are doing, for example. They're helping influencers like Keep It Cleaner have a very successful app. It's got something like a 4.9 star rating of 5,100 reviews on the App Store, which just freaks me out every time I see it. That's ridiculous that anything would have that high of a rating. And Bloom is another influencer app, a meditation app they have with Mitch's girlfriend, actually, Chloe Sepp. And they've got a few other influencer apps coming as well. So alternative ways for influencers to monetize and also to have something that they own for the long term. Because what happens when you don't want to create those videos anymore? When you used to create videos for 7-year-olds when you were 7, but now you're 25. You don't want to keep creating videos for 7-year-olds. You have different interests. And we're seeing this with rappers now. Rappers, Offset's posting about his kids all the time. There's no way he would have been thinking about posting about his kids all the time when he was starting to rap, at 16, 17, things like that. Logic, the same thing. He wants to retire to be a dad from rapping. And he's creating Twitch content now. Sorry, he signed a $1 million+ deal to Twitch, $1 million+ USD deal to Twitch, second figure deal. So things like that too. We're looking at. So there's a lot of development in the space, and then creating a lot more content for us too. Just trying to provide value. And man, it's hard because so often you just want to make like the shitty LinkedIn posts that are 1-sentence paragraphs that bring lots of likes in, but what does the likes do besides just fake validation? It doesn't bring you inbounds. It doesn't increase your standing in the industry. It doesn't actually educate people and provide you with LinkedIn business inbounds from people who are actually part of your target market. So just making sure to understand that too.
Man, Chris, thank you. This has been talk about providing value. You have provided me so much value, and every single time we have a conversation, man, you fill my head up with so much knowledge. So I'm sure so many people are going to get so much out of this. And anybody that is interested in getting involved in esports or gaming, Chris from BIG Esports, I'll plug everything down the bottom too. I'll plug your website and I'll plug your LinkedIn and Instagram so everyone can obviously get in touch with you. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And just I said to you the first time that I spoke to you that in 10 years' time, I think you're going to be pretty big in this space, and it's crazy to just watch your growth, even over the last couple of months. What you've been talking about, it's insane, man. So I'm extremely happy for you, and thank you so much for taking the time out in your busy schedule to chat with me.
No worries, man. You said 10 years, so we'll make it 4. Let's do it.
Yeah. Done. I can't wait to look back on this in 4 years, and you'll be living in a $30 million home in LA, hopefully. Huh?
I'll be buying it off you, so don't worry.
You're the best, Chris. Well, have a really good day, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
Thanks, man.